So if you're a natural bodybuilder or someone training naturally, or if you're over 40, you're probably really concerned about things like testosterone and growth hormone, and you're probably trying to do everything possible to increase the levels you have in your body to maximize your muscle mass. And here's the thing, that strategy is completely wrong. And what I'm going to share with you in this video is going to make you rethink completely the whole idea of the importance of testosterone and growth hormone for maximizing muscle mass as a natural athlete. And I'm going to share with you the real driving force behind my transformation as a natural athlete, and also what has helped me maintain the type of shape I hold on to here in my 50s. And trust me, it's probably not what you think it is. Stay tuned. I'm going to talk more about this. Natural bodybuilders and those training naturally tend to be obsessed about testosterone levels. And that right there is a huge mistake. You see, if muscle growth was all about testosterone, the guys in the gym who take drugs would all look the same. And they don't. And here's the uncomfortable but biological truth. Hormones don't build muscle. Here's the thing. For years, people have been told that muscle growth comes down to testosterone and growth hormone, or some magic chemical in your body is supposed to augment and increase. And yes, hormones do matter, but they're not the driver. They're simply part of the environment. Now, let's separate two very different conversations. When someone starts using steroids, they're overriding the body's natural limits. That's not optimization, that's replacement. But for natural athletes, there's a hard ceiling on your hormones. And the problem is that the bodybuilders and fitness influencers who are on drugs are the most popular, and they look fantastic. We all know they're on drugs. And so natural athletes look at the benefits that they get from testosterone and growth hormone and think that they need to do everything possible to increase their own level. And yes, it is true. From your late 20s into your 30s, 40s, 50s, for the average untrained individual, testosterone levels do drop as you get older. And so for many people over 40, the natural thought process is to do everything possible to increase testosterone because there's the idea of testosterone equals muscle growth, which, like I said, is a horrible idea. Each of us has a set limit to how much testosterone our bodies can produce, a limit that as a natural athlete can't be surpassed. You can't hack your way to a higher testosterone and growth hormone level with supplements or cool plunges or breathing tricks. It's just not possible. And here's what almost no one tells you. Aside from those with real hormonal imbalances, you don't have to worry about your hormones. Muscle growth is not driven by a chemical. It's driven by a process. A biological sequence that starts with unaccustomed stimulus taken to overload, which then stimulates protein synthesis, which leads to bigger and stronger muscles if recovery is adequate. That's important. And only then is it supported by hormones. Testosterone doesn't build muscle on its own. Growth hormone doesn't build muscle on its own. They don't create growth. They allow growth to happen if the process is respected. So I started off at 125 pounds and 6 feet tall. I was able to realize my goal to become a successful natural bodybuilding champion with a system of workouts called naturally intense, high intensity training. But here's the thing. My testosterone levels over the course of my entire career, and even to this day, have always been normal. That's right. My testosterone levels, whenever I got them checked, were always normal. They were never high. They were never low. They were always just about average. Nothing spectacular. And yet I was able to build a world-class physique. But even more importantly, surpassing the error of small numbers, I was able to help a significant number of men and women as well build truly impressive physiques. And interestingly enough, the clients who I trained over the years were competing as natural bodybuilders. Whenever they went to have blood work done, they would also, just like I would, out of curiosity, check their testosterone levels as well. And it was always within average to normal levels. Kind of turns everything upside down, especially given the fact that when people tend to see someone like me, the first thing they will think is, well, if you're a natural athlete, you never use drugs, and you look like that, you must have some naturally high testosterone levels. And what can I do to make my testosterone levels higher? And I hear that more and more as I got older and maintained my physique, especially from those over 40. And that's completely not where your focus should be. See, here's the thing. I was always a bit of an academic, and I understood very early on as a teenager that there really wasn't any way for me to artificially augment my testosterone level. And so my focus was and always has been on process. I start by you understanding the stress recovery adaptation cycle. So back in the 1930s, an endocrinologist called Hans Seeley explained the body's natural response to controlled stress using something called the general adaptation syndrome. And the best way I can explain it to you is using the callus on your hands analogy. So think about calluses that form on your hands. I have tons of them. With general adaptation syndrome, stage 1 is alarm. So the first time you start lifting heavy weights and you're holding onto the bar or the dumbbells, your hands hurt. Your skin may blister and it may feel a little bit on the raw side. That's your body reacting to a new stress. And as far as your training is concerned, that's the same thing as when you first start training, you feel muscle soreness, fatigue, and even a temporary performance drop. Stage 2 is resistance. If you continue applying enough stress to your hands, with back to the hand analogy, your hands begin to adapt. The skin on your hand that's in contact with the barbells and the dumbbells gets thicker, and the same way that you were holding before no longer hurts your hand. Your hands become more resilient and can tolerate greater loads, and your performance in terms of holding on to things while you're training improves. And now, as far as training is concerned, that's the same as the strength increases, the muscle increases, and the increased work capacity that you get when you're training. But then there's stage 3, exhaustion. Now, if you're lifting weights and your skin is really hurting and your hands are really hurting you when you're training and you're ripping away that skin and you keep on doing it without any recovery, you're not going to get thicker skin and calluses. You're going to get torn skin and infections. Everything is going to break down. And as far as training is concerned, if you do too much, it's the same. You get overtraining, joint pain, plateaus, and injury. Because just like the callus, the body adapts to stress only when it's applied in the correct dose and given time to recover. Too little, no callus. Too much, torn skin. Just enough recovery, stronger hands, calloused hands that can take the load. Adaptation, however, happens after the stress, not during it. You don't build calluses by rubbing your hands all day long. That's how you rip your hands apart. You build them by challenging them briefly and then letting them heal. And as far as training is concerned, your body doesn't grow from stress alone. It grows from the right stress followed by recovery. Too little, no adaptation. Too much, you get the exhaustion phase. And just enough, you're going to get progress by getting bigger and stronger. And so perhaps the most important driving force for my being able to go from being 125 pounds to where I am even today is the fact that I focus completely on recovery. One of the foundational ideas and precepts which I naturally intense, high-intensity training that I figured out from going to the library and reading everything I could read about how the body actually works is that given the results that we want from training are essentially following all the rules of the general adaptation syndrome, it made more sense to spend less time training and more time resting. To that end, when I was putting together a split as to how many days I should be training, and bear in mind, I train with brutally intense, high-intensity training workouts that are so intense and go nonstop that I can only train for about 10, 15, max 20 minutes. And because the intensity is so high, my thinking was I should train 3 days a week and rest 4 days a week, making sure that I had 7 days of full rest between individual muscle groups being directly trained. And I came up with a training fit whereby I do legs on day 1, back and shoulders on day 2, chest, arms, abdominals on day 3. No full body workouts, no 4-day training splits, because I got such amazing results doing exactly that split. And every time I'd experiment by changing it around, or if I was training natural bodybuilders who very often had the habit of going against my advice and putting in an extra day, training 4 days, sometimes even 5 days a week. And in every single instance, those training 3 days a week always built more muscle and, interestingly enough, lost more body fat compared to those who were training more. And bear in mind, I started training in the 80s, and even back then, training was dominated by this whole idea: if you want to build muscle, you have to train 6 days a week for an hour, 2 hours. As prolific but drug-using bodybuilders, were very much pioneers and promoters of the whole idea of high-volume training, and thus, instead of recovery, relies on steroids and growth hormone and hormone enhancement as the primary driver for growth. That's where it comes from. And it's why it's not always applicable for natural athletes, especially if you're over 40. However, I can tell you for a fact, if you focus on recovery and the idea of having enough time in between your workouts so your body can really make the most out of that training stimulus, the average person will get better results, regardless of age, if the intensity is high enough. So if you've been struggling with your gains, testosterone and growth hormone isn't the problem. It's understanding recovery and making sure you're training hard enough with unaccustomed stimulus to the point of overload to make sure you initiate the adaptation response. As a natural, our focus has to be on the process. And there's some studies out there that say things like testosterone has been found to increase after workouts, because it keeps on being misquoted as saying that natural athletes should train more often to get more gains, which is absurd because it's not focused on the main driver of growth as a natural athlete. And even the study's authors say that it's just a recommendation. There was never any testing to see if it actually works. However, there's a lot of tests because so many of you out there have trained, done the 5-day-a-week, 4-day-a-week, 6-day-a-week training, and haven't seen the spectacular results that you should be seeing. So my whole life is based on the idea of who much is given, much is expected. I try to share as much as I possibly can to help those on the natural path. And what's really important for you to understand is that you already have all the tools you need within you to build muscle and create a fantastic physique. I need to ignore anyone trying to tell you anything or convince you that you need something outside of yourself, because you don't. Now, if you want to learn more about naturally intense, high-intensity training, here's a good place to start. And I hope this video helps give you some perspective on exactly what you should be doing as a natural athlete to build muscle and get the most out of your training, regardless of your age. Thanks so much for tuning in. Know that I believe in you. And as always, Excelsior.